All right, listeners, let's dive right in. We're going deep into the world of AI today. Specifically, how researchers are working to make large language models, those LLMs you've probably heard about, better at solving scientific problems. We've got this really cool research paper straight from the arxiv preprint server. And it lays out a pretty clever new training method, one that could make LLMs much more reliable, much more accurate, especially when tackling complex scientific questions.
You see, the problem with LLMs right now, well, they're fantastic at generating human-like text. They kind of stumble when faced with complex scientific problems. They might give inaccurate answers or even just make stuff up, what we call hallucinations in the field.
Aha, so not ready to replace scientists just yet. But this paper we're looking at, it suggests a way to fix this. By giving LLMs the ability to use external tools, like scientists would use a calculator, a database, or a simulation.
Exactly. And the researchers found that by training LLMs to use these tools selectively, they could get much better accuracy.
Okay, color me intrigued. How does this training actually work?
It's a two-stage process. The first stage is called world knowledge distillation. In this stage, the LLM learns directly from solutions generated using external tools. It's like it's absorbing the knowledge built into how the tool is used, building up its own internal scientific database.
Interesting. So it's not just memorizing facts, it's learning how to use knowledge in a practical way.
Exactly. Then the second stage is tool usage adaptation. Here, the LLM learns to decide when to use a tool based on how hard the problem is. It learns to figure out if it can solve the problem on its own, or if it needs that extra help from a tool.
So they're teaching it to think strategically, not just be a superpowered calculator. Seems like a crucial step towards making these LLMs genuinely useful in science.
Absolutely. And to really test this method, the researchers use a whole bunch of different scientific data sets, everything from mathematics to climate science to epidemiology. Some of these were super challenging, even for the most advanced LLMs.
So they really put this method through its paces.
Yeah.
What kind of results did they see?
Pretty impressive, actually. The LLMs trained with this two-step approach were much better at getting the right answers, so accuracy was way up. But just as important, they were much better at using the tools correctly.
Meaning they were choosing the right tool for the right job.
Exactly. Which is super important, both for accuracy and to save time and computing power.
That's a win-win. You mentioned a surprise earlier, something about the size of the LLM.
Yeah, this was unexpected. They found that a smaller LLM, one that was fine-tuned using their method, actually outperformed some of the larger, more established models on certain tasks.
Wait, a smaller model doing better than the big guys? That's fascinating. What does that tell us?
Well, it suggests this new training method is really effective at getting the most out of an LLM. Even with limited resources, it's not just about raw computing power anymore. It's about teaching the LLM to think and act like a real scientist.
So this could really change the game in making AI more accessible and useful in a lot of different scientific fields.
Absolutely. Opens up some exciting possibilities for using AI to accelerate scientific discovery, even for researchers who don't have access to huge computing resources.
This is definitely getting me pumped about the potential of AI in science. Before we get too carried away, though, I think it's important to talk about what this research means in practice.
Of course. To really understand that, we need to get into the details of the data sets they used. They didn't just use any old textbook problems. They built some seriously challenging data sets that really pushed the limits of what LLMs can do. And we'll dig into all those details after a short break. These data sets, they were designed to cover a bunch of different scientific areas, to see how this training method worked across different fields. Like, they included data sets in mathematics, which is kind of the foundation of a lot of science. They also had stuff on climate science, where LLMs could be used to, help us understand complex climate models and predict future climate trends, especially important with climate change being, such a big deal these days. And even a data set on epidemiology, which could have a huge impact on, public health and controlling diseases.
So they were aiming for a pretty universal approach to scientific AI, huh?
Exactly. They actually built 4 brand new data sets from scratch for this research to push the boundaries of what LLMs can handle. And the best part is they made all these data sets public for other researchers to use, which is fantastic for the whole field.
That's awesome. It shows real commitment to open science and collaboration. So what did these custom data sets actually involve? Can you give us a sneak peek?
One of them focused on MuJoCo, which is a physics engine used to simulate realistic movements and interactions. They used MuJoCo to create problems related to rigid body and soft body dynamics. Think about collisions, friction, gravity, all those things that make objects move and interact in the real world.
So like teaching these LLMs Physics 101.
Exactly. Another dataset they built focused on partial differential equations, or PDEs. These are mathematical equations used in tons of scientific fields to describe how things change over time and space.
And they built their own custom PDE solver and used that to create a whole data set of challenging problems for the LLM to tackle.
Yep. It's like giving the LLM a virtual lab to experiment in and test its PDE solving skills. To wrap up their custom dataset collection, they created one for climate science and another for epidemiology. The climate science dataset focused on predicting changes in Earth's surface temperature based on different climate scenarios. They used a neural surrogate model, which is like a simplified version of a really complex climate model, to come up with challenging questions.
So they're training these LLMs to be climate scientists, analyzing data and making predictions about the future of our planet. Incredible.
And the epidemiology dataset, it focused on simulating the spread of diseases and how epidemics might play out over time. They used a really advanced surrogate model that takes into account things like population density, how easily a disease spreads, and different intervention strategies.
Wow, this research has implications for so many different areas. It really seems like they're building a foundation for AI to help us understand and solve some of the toughest problems facing humanity. Besides these custom datasets, they also tested their method on some existing benchmark datasets, right? To see how it stacked up against other approaches.
Absolutely. They included math, a dataset of high school level math competition problems, and SciBench, which has college level problems in math, physics, and chemistry. This let them compare their results directly with other LLMs to see how their method performed.
And what did those comparisons show?
Well, on the custom datasets, their LLM crushed it, way outperforming all the baseline models. Shows how well their training approach works. On the public benchmark datasets, it didn't quite beat the best models out there, but it still showed a big improvement over the base model without any fine-tuning.
So, not quite the champion yet, but definitely a strong contender, especially considering it's a smaller model going up against some real heavy hitters in the LLM world.
Exactly. And it's important to note that those top-performing models are usually much larger and trained on massive amounts of data. The fact that their smaller, fine-tuned LLM even came close is pretty amazing. But besides accuracy, another important aspect of this research is efficiency. Their training method tackles the issue of LLMs becoming too reliant on tools. They wanted to make sure the LLM only used tools when absolutely necessary, striking that balance between internal knowledge and tool usage.
So they're not just making these LLMs smarter, they're making them more resourceful, more like actual scientists who know when to grab a tool and when to rely on their own intuition.
Exactly. And what they found was that their LLM was consistently making smart choices about when to use tools and when not to. They called this tool usage accuracy, and it was really good across all the data sets.
That's huge for efficiency, especially since using external tools can be computationally expensive and time-consuming. Sounds like they've built an LLM that's not just smart, but practical too.
Yes, and that practicality comes from the researchers' analysis of the LLM's decisions on each problem. They categorized the decisions based on the difficulty and whether the LLM used a tool or not. This gave them a clear and objective way to evaluate its tool usage.
So they weren't just watching the LLM work, they were tracking its decision-making process step by step.
Huh.
With these impressive results, where do the researchers go next? What's next on their research agenda?
Well, they do acknowledge that their current approach needs domain-specific fine-tuning. This means they have to train the LLM separately for each scientific area. But they suggest that future research could look into ways to unify training across related scientific fields. Maybe even create an LLM that could seamlessly handle different areas of science.
Now that would be groundbreaking. An AI scientist that could connect the dots across different disciplines and maybe even discover things humans might miss.
Exactly. They also suggest incorporating stepwise adaptive tool utilization. Basically, this means giving the LLM even more flexibility in how it uses tools, allowing it to make adaptive decisions at each step of solving a problem, not just at the beginning.
So it's like giving the LLM the ability to adjust its approach along the way, just like a human scientist would when faced with unexpected challenges.
Precisely. This would make the LLM even more adaptable and responsive to the complexities of scientific problems.
Those are some really exciting possibilities.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up this deep dive, though, I want to touch on something we've been skirting around but haven't fully addressed.
What's that?
We've been talking about the potential of AI to revolutionize science. But like any powerful tech, there are always two sides to consider. What about the potential downsides? The risks.
That's a really important point, and one we should definitely discuss in more detail. As we build these increasingly powerful AI tools, we need to be careful and consider those potential risks. For example, one concern is that relying too much on AI could lead to scientists not thinking as critically.
Yeah, that makes sense. If you have an AI that can just spit out answers to complex scientific questions, it's tempting to just take those answers without really understanding how it got there.
Exactly. It's important to remember AI should be a tool to help human intelligence, not replace it. Scientists still need to be able to critically look at the results these AI systems give them, understand their limitations, and apply their own knowledge and judgment to the problems they're trying to solve.
So it's not just about training the AI, it's about training the scientists who use these tools too.
Absolutely. Scientists need to be trained in AI literacy, understanding how these systems work, what they're good at, what they're not good at, and how to understand their results. This will help make sure AI is used responsibly and effectively in scientific research.
Another concern I've heard is that relying too much on AI could stifle creativity and innovation in science.
I can see how that could happen. If scientists become too dependent on AI to come up with hypotheses or design experiments, they might miss out on those accidental discoveries that often come from human intuition and thinking outside the box.
Like those aha moments in science where someone makes a connection that seems totally random but leads to a major breakthrough. Could an AI really capture that kind of spontaneous insight?
That's a tough one to answer. AI systems are awesome at spotting patterns and making predictions based on existing data, but they might not be so good at those leaps of creative insight that have driven so many scientific revolutions.
So it seems like the key is finding that balance between using the power of AI and still keeping that human spark of creativity and ingenuity alive in science.
I think you nailed it. It's about using AI to enhance, not replace, the human element in scientific discovery.
Well said. This has been a really thought-provoking conversation, and I really appreciate you breaking down this research for us.
It's been my pleasure. This whole world of AI and science is changing so fast, it's an exciting time to be following these developments.
And to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of AI and scientific discovery. We hope you've learned some cool new things about how these powerful technologies are shaping the future of science, and also about some of the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. Remember, the future of AI and science is in our hands. It's up to us to make sure these tools are used responsibly, ethically, and for the good of everyone.
It's a really important point, and one we should definitely discuss more. As we build these increasingly powerful AI tools, we need to be careful and think about those risks.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, one concern is that if we rely too much on AI, scientists might not think as critically.
Right. It makes sense if you have this AI that can just give you answers to complex scientific questions.
Yeah.
You might be tempted to just take those answers without really understanding the reasoning behind them.
Exactly. It's like we have to remember that AI should be a tool to help us, to help human intelligence, not to replace it. Scientists, they still need to be able to critically evaluate what these AI systems are putting out, understand their limitations, and apply their own knowledge and judgment to the problems they're trying to solve.
So it's not just about training the AI, it's about training the scientists who use those tools too.
Absolutely. Scientists need to be trained in AI literacy, like understanding how these systems work, what they're good at, what they're not good at, and how to interpret their results. That's what will help make sure AI is used responsibly and effectively in research.
Sure. And another concern I've heard is that if we rely too much on AI, it could stifle creativity and innovation in science.
Yeah, I can see how that could happen. If scientists get too dependent on AI to generate hypotheses or design experiments, they might miss out on those serendipitous discoveries that often come from human intuition and thinking outside the box.
It's like those aha moments in science where someone just connects the dots in a way that seems totally random, but ends up leading to a huge breakthrough. Could an AI really have those moments?
Yeah, that's a really tough one. AI systems, they're great at identifying patterns and making predictions from existing data, but it's hard to say if they can have those leaps of creative insight that have driven so many scientific revolutions.
So it sounds like finding that balance is key.
Yep.
Utilizing the power of AI, while still preserving that essential human element of creativity and ingenuity in science.
I think you hit the nail on the head. It's all about using AI to enhance, not replace, the human role in scientific discovery.
Well said. This has been such a thought-provoking conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time to walk us through this research.
It's been my pleasure. This whole field of AI and science is evolving so rapidly, it's a truly exciting time to be a part of it.
Absolutely. And to all our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of AI.